Project Bill here, and today we reached 600 subscribers, so yay! But if we manage to reach 666 subscribers, then we'll make an evil version of Deku, so get to subscribing and liking and commenting. And before we begin, just know this video will have a lot of glazing on it, and unlike other YouTubers who start Izuku's life from the start, like Sether or Puffinverse, I do it differently, so expect this video to be different. And now, let's stop yapping and begin What If Deku Had a Divine Dragon Quirk? And we start story in Japan, Hosu City, and to a 15-year-old Izuku flying through the sky with his dragonic wings, because today was the day of the UA entrance exam, and his greatest opportunity of becoming a hero, or to be exact, in Izuku's perspective, the #1 hero, and Izuku smirks to himself, feeling that today, with a great as day as he reminisced about his up to this point. And yes, I am using this reminiscence as a flashback, so now flashback time. And so we now get to Izuku's life, and his parents are the same like in the original, and Hisashi left to get milk like in the original, and so Inko was left to take care of Izuku, which she did greatly. And in the following years of Izuku's life, he was a confident, charismatic, and ambitious kid, like he was the most confident in any room he was ever in, and always the strongest, and always taking on any challenges to prove himself to be better. And at age 4, he was taken to the Quirk doctor, different from Dr. Ujiko. And after some tests, Izuku was told that he has a quirk, but what quirk, they don't know. And while it was, well, pretty annoying to hear that, Izuku knew it won't take long until he gets his quirk. And Izuku kept that mindset for the following years. Izuku trained, learned, and made friends and growed up as a person and admiring heroes, helping Inko, and being a pretty cool guy to be around, like strong, confident, nice, and a coup other great qualities about Izuku. And Izuku's life was great, but he still had not unlocked his quirk. And one person made sure to mention that, and that was his childhood friend, Katsuki Bakugo, who is always a, well, annoying, egoistic, explosive brat and annoying person to be around, like bullying the kids with weak quirks and being a pain in the ass, and yet sighing that he will become the #1 hero. And Izuku, hearing that the first time they met in middle school, laughed in front of Bakugo's face, calling him a shit excuse of a heroic person, and a dumbass for believing he is going to achieve the title of #1 hero with that personality. And obviously, after Bakugo heard that, he wanted to kill Izuku, and so Izuku and Bakugo fought, and Izuku folded Bakugo in 10 seconds because of his much higher strength, and after that, Bakugo tried to get in Izuku's way in any way possible, but always failing, and Izuku in these years of being with Bakugo losing respect every day, until just ignoring him and their classmates in all of this took Izuku's side, because well, Izuku was basically better than Bakugo in every way, and without a shitty personality. And because of that, Bakugo felt like shit, like basically the victim, and felt like Izuku ruined his life and shit, even though his own mindset and personality and actions caused this. And in this, no one wanted to help Bakugo, because they were scared or did not like, and Bakugo is too egoistic and prideful himself to ask for anyone's help. But while Bakugo was wallowing in his own shitness, we now get back to Izuku, who had to actually leave Mustafa City with Inko because Inko had gotten a better job, and yada yada tada. Izuku said goodbye to his friends and left, and because of Izuku leaving, Bakugo got back the throne to the school, and became even worse of a person. But back to Izuku, right now Izuku still had one thing in his mind, and that was Quirk, because he still felt like there was something in him remaining, and it was getting closer day by day. And Izuku trained himself if he at the very least did not have a quirk, and right now he was at age 14, and training in a very large and dense forest in Hosu City, and while doing the training of punching the side of a mountain, he felt it, a burning heat in his heart, as he felt power coursing throughout his body, as then, in a burst of smoke, Izuku felt better than ever, as he looked around, seeing no trees, until he looked down, realizing that he had just transformed into a dragon. And after realizing that, Izuku also realized that he was like 100 feet ass-fucking tall, as he felt happy at finally getting this power and much more as he started to test his power in this form. And first threw a punch which created a large shockwave, destroyed about many trees in front of him as he smiled, and then threw a kick which did even more damage, as he did more testing, learning that he can shoot fire, lightning, air, ice, and water, and lastly heal himself as well, as this was literally the perfect quirk, like if counting this was a 7-in-1 quirk. And while Izuku was getting tired from the stamina loss, he was too excited to not realize, and he tested more and more, until suddenly he de-transformed, and was now on the ground tired as shit, but the happiest he could ever be, as he knew this power was gonna allow him to be the greatest hero after All Might. And so in the following next 10 months, Izuku trained himself, and while in that dragonic form, which he calls Divine Dragon. And also I wanted to mention the dragon's appearance is Volcanica from Re:Zero, and even taller, but Izuku trained himself and learned that he also has a pseudo-transformation of the Divine Dragon quirk, which makes his physical stats go through the roof, and allows him to control all of those elemental and healing powers as well. And this transformation is weaker than the complete one. It's really much easier to use. So Izuku trained, and Izuku in all of this told Inko about this cool-ass quirk and promised her to keep it a secret, which Inko did, and Izuku kept training. And this is where we now end the flashback and now get back to Deku, who is still flying through the sky in his half-dragon form until getting to Mustafa City, and then after some more flying, he stopped a few kilometers before coming to UA High, because he wants to be a great surprise when he becomes #1 in the entrance exam. So Izuku came down in an alley de-transforming, and then walked out of there in a crispy leather jacket and leather pants as he walked into the UA High entrance exam, looking around and then seeing Bakugo here, which made Izuku's mood sour, and Izuku ignored Bakugo and went in the front taking a seat as the written exam began and everyone got their papers, and Izuku answered their questions with ease, because he learned as much as he could about hero politics, rescue scenarios, and much more, because my boy Izuku is not taking any chances of being #2 in the hero ranks. And so Izuku answered the questions, and after that was done. "What's up, listeners? Can I get a hey?" Present Mike loudly said throughout the whole room, but no one responded. "That's coolio," Present Mike continued. "Here's how it's going to go. Each of you are going to be sent to one of 7 testing locations where you'll have 10 minutes to take on 3 different kinds of robot villains. Use your quirks however you want, contestant." "May I ask a question?" a person with a stern voice said. "Go ahead," Present Mike said. "On the handout, there are no less than 4 robots running around the city. If this is a printing mistake, it is one unfitting of the UI institution," Iida said sternly. "Kid, I was getting there. Now calm down, yo," Present Mike said, as Iida went back into his seat satisfied, as Present Mike finished the rest of his explanation on how the robot point system works, and to ignore the 0 pointer if they come across it. And after that ended, everyone started getting ready, and due to Izuku already being in the front, Iida does not get in his way, as Present Mike suddenly gave the go, and everyone was confused, but Izuku was not, as he instantly transformed into his half-dragon form, and instantly flew in Sector B, while the others were confused and said that was cheating, until Present Mike explained to them what's happening, and to right now go. And after that, everyone went in as well, but Izuku in these 30 seconds already had gained over 20 points worth of 2- and 3-pointer robots by using lightning attacks, as Izuku kept flying throughout Sector B, hunting down as many 2- and 3-pointers he could, as his eyes landed on a group of 5 2-pointer dragon robots, as he went, smiled, and fell down on one of them, crushing the 2-pointer, as he punched one away to the side of a building, while electrocuting the rest 3, as those poor robots had 0 time to attack, while Izuku flew off to defeat more robots. And in the following 5 minutes, Izuku racked up a total of 140 points worth of robots, while Nezu had now summoned the 0-pointer robot, as everyone literally ran away from it, while Izuku ignored it because putting on a show
go for no gain is not worth it, Izuku thought to himself, smirking, until he heard a scream, as he looked to where he heard the scream from, as his eyes landed on a brown-haired girl, who we know is Ochako, and Ochako was under rubble as the zero-pointer robot was closing in, about to crush Ochako with its big foot, and Izuku knew he could not let that shit happen, so he instantly rushed in, transforming into his 100% divine dragon form, as he let out a roar that shook the heavens and broke every single window in Sector B and the surrounding sectors as well, as his height was 1.5 times bigger than the zero-pointer, as Izuku did a ramming attack on the zero-pointer, and then grabbing it by the head sent out a shot of blue fire at 2500 degrees Celsius, which instantly melted the zero-pointer's head, as Izuku stopped and threw the zero-pointer onto the ground, and de-transformed as he went to help Ochako and got to him and picked off the rubble away from her feet, as Izuku asked if she was alright, while Ochako's face was of pure shock and disbelief, until she caught herself and said, "Yes, but her foot was Don't worry, I will help."
As a sonic boom was made by that throw alone as Aisawa looked at his device. The screen glitched for a second, unable to process the speed, before finally settling on infinity. Infinity? The class screamed in unison. How is that even possible? Ida shouted, his engine stalling in shock. Simple, my quirk is too strong. But remember, I made a promise and I won't break it, Aisawa-sensei, so get ready to be impressed, Izuku said, giving a thumbs up while de-transforming, as Aisawa looked at the infinity on his screen, then back at Izuku, who was casually stretching like he hadn't just launched a ball into low Earth orbit. As Aisawa's eyes narrowed, but inside he was reeling. He had seen powerful quirks, but this kid was a force of nature. Half strength, huh? Aisawa muttered, a small, tired smirk playing on his lips. Don't get cocky, kid. We have 6 more tests. Let's see if you can keep that #1 spot. Watch me, sensei, Izuku replied, his voice dripping with that signature confidence. As in the 50-meter dash. Izuku was actually being serious, even though he can be, right now, chill and be the #1. But to Izuku, this shit is important for his hero career, so paying attention is a must. And so in the 50-meter dash, as the go was given and Ida blasted off, his engines roaring as he crossed the line in 3.04 seconds. A great time, right? Wrong. Izuku in his half-dragon form was already standing at the finish line with a serious expression. 0.01 seconds, the machine announced, while the other students realized they were fucked, and this is where we now get to the grip strength test, as Mizo Shoji managed a massive 540 kilograms. The class was cheering, thinking it was the peak, as Izuku came up to the machine and gripped it hard as his hand now had blue scales on them. As the device didn't just register a number, it literally imploded into a ball of scrap metal and leaking hydraulic fluid. Shit, sorry about that, Izuku said, genuinely sorry. As for the rest of the tests, the standing long jump, the repeated side steps, the distance run, Izuku was just in a league of his own. He was flying, creating shockwaves, and moving with a grace that made everyone else look like they were moving in slow motion. And by the time the final test was over, the entire class was exhausted, except for Izuku, who looked like he had just finished a light jog. Aisawa pressed a button on his remote, projecting the results into the air, as Izuku was at first, then Bakugo, then Todoroki, and then lastly, at the last, Minoru Mineta, as he looked like he was about to cry. By the way, the expulsion was a logical deception, Aisawa said, watching the color return to Mineta's face. It was just to draw out the best in all of you. A deception? Momo said, surprised. I thought it was obvious. Actually, I got too dense and believed it, but it doesn't matter now, Izuku said, putting on his leather jacket while Bakugo had snapped. As that was the last straw, Bakugo had been second best or worse all day. He had been ignored, belittled, and completely outclassed by the person he used to call a Deku. Deku! Bakugo screamed, his palms igniting with massive, blinding explosions. He lunged forward, ignoring Aisawa's warning. You think you're better than me? You're just a quirkless bug. Tell me how you cheated. As Izuku dodged and dodged again, as Bakugo was getting more and more pissed, until Aisawa stepped in and told Bakugo if he did that again, then he will be expelled. And after Bakugo heard that, Bakugo stopped himself, still raging inside, while Izuku had a disappointed expression. As Aisawa dismissed everyone, but after everyone left, Izuku stayed behind. As Aisawa looked at Izuku, So, do I get apologized by you for the seriously great performance I showed or no? And make it quick, I don't want to waste time, Izuku said, trying to sound normal. As Aisawa sighed, the kind of heavy, soul-weary sigh that suggested he was already questioning his life choices on the first day of the term. He deactivated his quirk, his hair falling flat against his shoulders, and stuffed his hands into his pockets. "You're arrogant, Midoriya," Aisawa said bluntly, stepping closer until he was staring Izuku right in the eye. "That confidence is a weapon, but right now it's a double-edged one. You didn't just show me your strength today, you showed the entire class that you consider them beneath you. A hero who stands alone because he thinks no one can keep up is a hero who eventually falls." Izuku didn't flinch. He just adjusted the collar of his leather jocker. His expression remains cool. "With all due respect, Sensei, if they can't keep up with me, they won't be able to keep up with the villains I plan to take down. I'm not here to be a part of the pack, I'm here to lead it." "Then lead by example, not by belittling them," Aisawa countered. He pulled out a small tablet and swiped through Izuku's data. "I won't apologize for doing my job. You got first place, that's your reward. But if you think your power exempts you from the rules of this school or my discipline, you'll find yourself out that gate faster than your 50-meter dash. Now, get to the locker room. You've wasted enough of my nap time." "Oh, okay. Goodbye for now," Izuku said as he left as well. And this is where we now jump cut to the next week. And in this week, Izuku made friends with Kirishima, Ochako, Ida, and a few others, or almost everyone to be exact. But this is where we will now start the battle trail arc, as right now, Izuku and everyone else is in Class 1A, until suddenly, "I am walking through the door like a normal person." All Might walked in wearing his Silver Age costume. The class erupted in excitement, but Izuku just leaned back in his chair, his feet crossed at the ankles. He watched All Might with an analytical eye. "The symbol of peace," Izuku thought. "The man I'm going to surpass." "Today we do battle training," All Might announced, flashing a grin that could blind a man. "And to be a hero, you need to look the part. Get your costumes and meet me at Ground Beta." And this is where we now jump cut to everyone getting to Ground Gamma, as Izuku arrived and he was wearing the suit that you guys saw on the thumbnail. But back to the story, as All Might explained about the 2v2 heroes versus villains mock battle, and the first round was between the villains Izuku and Ochako versus the heroes Ida and Bakugo. And after All Might said that, Bakugo was almost salivating at the thought of finally putting Izuku in his place, while Tenya Ida said good luck to Izuku, and Izuku did the same as Ida and Bakugo went to their designated area, while Izuku and Ochako went to the bomb room. And after arriving there, Ochako asked Izuku if he had a plan, and Izuku nodded, explaining the plan. And after the explanation was done, Izuku moved the bomb to the middle of the room, and after some waiting, All Might gave the go, and Izuku and Ochako waited and waited, as Bakugo was coming up from each floor with Ida who was following him, as Bakugo exploded open the door and got in, until he felt weightless as Ochako had used her zero gravity on him, while Izuku grabbed Bakugo's head and smashed his own into Bakugo's, as Bakugo passed out from that attack alone, as Izuku set Bakugo's body down to the ground. "Ochako, go protect the bomb," Izuku said, and Ochako hearing that did so, as Izuku went down a floor to Ida as he blitzed Ida, landing a devastating and mean gut punch, which sent Ida flying against a wall, as Izuku quickly used the capture tape. "Villain team wins," All Might says from the observation room, as he and the others were very impressed, as Izuku nodded himself and went to the 5th floor, and then he got Ochako, as Bakugo and Ida were sent to Recovery Girl's office, while Izuku and Ochako went to the observation room, and once arriving, all of the students, minus a few, started glazing Izuku and Ochako, while Ochako said it was nothing and it was Izuku's plan, while Izuku basked in the glory, as All Might arrived, congratulating on the great performance of Izuku and Ochako's, and Izuku, just as well, basked in the glory. But after the rest of the matches were done and everyone was leaving, All Might asked Izuku if he could stay for a minute, and Izuku did so, and once everyone truly left, All Might deflated into his Small Might form, which Izuku was shocked, but his expression hid that. "So, how did this happen? Or, well, what happened to you?" Izuku said. And after that, All Might explained about his injury, and then about One for All and All for One, and that he wants Izuku to be his successor. And Izuku, after hearing that, all that smiled and said, "I'm flattered, All Might, but I'm already strong enough as is, and adding your power to it will only make it harder for me to control my already barely controllable power. But on the bright side, you can give this power to a quirkless kid and watch your legacy fulfilled and them being achieved," Izuku said, and All Might hearing that smiled and nodded, telling Izuku that he was a good.
And after this conversation had ended, this is where we now jump cut to 1 week later as Class 1A were in a bus heading to the USJ. As I'm not making the talk of who is the strongest because it's Izuku, and because my power died while making this part specifically. But back to the story. And so after a bit, the bus stopped and Class 1A arrived at the USJ, meeting Pro Hero 13, who gave a speech about the dangers of using a quirk, which Izuku paid some attention to, and after it was over, Class 1A entered the USJ. As the class stepped onto the central plaza of the USJ, the atmosphere was light until the air in the center of the facility began to warp and crack like broken glass. A swirling vortex of purple and black mist expanded, and from within it, a horde of villains began to pour out. As 13 and Aisawa immediately jumped into action, but Izuku stood his ground, his eyes narrowing as he sensed the sheer amount of malice radiating from the man with hands all over his body, Tamori Shigari, and the massive, brain-exposed creature standing beside him. "Stay back, everyone," Aisawa commanded, pulling his goggles over his eyes. 13, protect the students." Eraserhead and 13? The schedule said All Might was supposed to be here, Shigari rasped with his voice scratching against the air. "Maybe if we kill a few of these kids, he'll show up." And before Aisawa could even leap down the stairs, a blur of motion passed him. It was Izuku. He didn't wait for a command, he didn't wait for a plan. He was already mid-air, his half-dragon form manifesting instantly. Large obsidian-scaled wings ripped through the back of his leather jacket, and his eyes glowed an ocean blue. "Midoriya, wait!" Ida shouted, but it was too late. As Izuku hit the plaza floor like a meteor, the impact creating a shockwave that sent the lower-tier villains flying back like ragdolls. He didn't use a flashy move, he simply stood up, his presence alone causing the villains to hesitate. "Is this it?" Izuku asked, a bored smirk playing on his face. "I expected a challenge. You're just a puppet." Izuku said as lightning came onto his arms as he punched the Nomu, sending it spiraling into the air, paralyzed for a few seconds. But Shigari wasn't worried. "It has shock absorption, you brat. Your physical hits are useless."
Back at the school, the news had already leaked. The Divine Dragon of UA was the only thing people were talking about on the internet. Izuku's social media followers were skyrocketing, and even though he wasn't officially a hero yet, he was already being ranked higher in popularity than some of the top 10. But Izuku didn't care about the fame. Well, he liked it, obviously, because he's him, but he was focused on one thing, the UA Sports Festival. He knew that was his stage to show the entire world that he wasn't just a student, he was the successor to the throne that All Might was still sitting on. And this is where we now jump cut to 2 weeks later and to the UA Sports Festival, and to the day of the Sports Festival. The day of the Sports Festival arrived, and the stadium was packed. 100,000 people screaming, cameras everywhere, and every pro hero in the country watching. In the Class 1A waiting room, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Todoroki stood up and walked over to Izuku, the room going dead silent. "Midoriya?" Todoroki said, looking him dead in the eyes. "From a purely objective standpoint, you are stronger than me. But I have a reason to be number one that I can't lose for. I will defeat you." Izuku didn't even get out of his chair. He just looked up with that signature confident smirk, leaning back with his hands behind his head. "I like the spirit, half and half," Izuku said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "But there's a difference between a hero and a legend. Today, I'm going to show you which one I am. Try not to get burned by my half-strength again." Bakugo, who was sitting in the corner literally vibrating with rage, kicked a desk over. "Shut up, I'll kill both of you," he screamed, but everyone just ignored him because, let's be real, at this point Bakugo was just the angry side character compared to the Divine Dragon. As the class walked out into the light of the stadium, President Mike's voice boomed over the speakers. "And here they are, the class that survived the USJ, and leading the pack, the boy who reached for the heavens and brought down a dragon, Izuku Midoriya." The roar of the crowd was deafening, and as Izuku stepped onto the field, the sun hitting his hair and making him look like a literal god. But Izuku knew one thing for sure. He was going to put on a show here. And as Izuku thought of that, Midnight told Izuku to come onto the podium and give a speech. And Izuku, hearing that, smirked, and for his coolness and no other reason at all, and just to aura farm, he transformed into his half-dragon form and flew to the podium and grabbed the mic, de-transforming and smirking. "Hello, people of Japan. You already probably know about me, and if you don't, then no. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I am a student of UA High, but let's skip the formalities for now and get to the real talk. And I am here to win this festival, and once I win, I will finish UA High and then be a certified hero and then replace All Might. But of course, I have to show or give you all a reason to believe me to be the new #1. And so, my reason to show you I am worthy of the title of #1 by not using my quirk for this entire festival. How about that? Izuku said while smiling like a madman as the stadium fell into a silence so heavy you could hear the wind whistling through the rafters. 100,000 people, civilian and hero alike, stared at the green-haired boy on the podium as if he had just told them the sky was red. Is he serious? A random pro hero in the stands whispered. He's going up against the top students in the country, and he's sealing his own quirk? Midnight's eyes were wide, her whip frozen in midair. Midoriya, that is a bold claim. You're sure about this? Izuku didn't even look at her. He just stared straight into the main camera, his smirk widening as he tossed the microphone back to her. I don't need my dragon to step on ants, Midnight-sensei, he said, his voice carrying perfectly even without the mic. He then jumped off the podium, landing with a heavy thud in front of Class 1A. You bastard, Bakugo roared, his palms popping with enough heat to melt the air. You think you can beat me without even trying? You're looking down on me again. Izuku didn't even turn his head. He just adjusted the collar of his leather jacket. I'm not looking down on you, Katsuki. I'm just looking at where the finish line is. You just happen to be in the way. Todoroki's face was like stone, but his left side was smoking. Do you really think pure physical strength is enough to surpass my flames? He asked, his voice cold. Watch and learn, half and half, Izuku replied. And after this, the obstacle race starts. Begin, Present Mike screamed, and the gates flew open. Immediately, Todoroki slammed his hand down and sent a massive wave of ice through the tunnel to freeze everyone in place. It was a classic move, one that should have ended the race for most. But suddenly, the ice didn't just crack, it exploded. As Todoroki's ice drop is a major hurdle, for your Izuku, that ice might as well be wet tissue paper as he rushed at blinding speeds, as after a bit he had already sprinted out of the tunnel, as now he was in front of the massive zero-pointers that had blocked the path. As Todoroki arrived, skated past one, and Bakugo blasted over one. But Izuku, he didn't go around. He ran straight out a zero-pointer and punched it so hard with pure physical force alone that a hole formed through it, as Izuku ran even faster. Did he just bust through a zero-pointer with his hands alone? Present Mike said, as the crowd roared in excitement. As Izuku breezed past Todoroki and Bakugo as he saw the fall and stopped, and squatted and then jumped high and over the entire thing. As then he got to the minefield area, and before Present Mike could even explain about it, Izuku ran through the mines without at all being damaged in breakneck speeds, and then he finally arrived at the finish line and crossed it. As the stadium was a cacophony of sheer, unadulterated chaos. Present Mike was practically leaning out of the commentary booth, his hair-gelled head vibrating with excitement. What did we just witness? Mike screamed, his voice cracking through the speakers. No quirk, no dragon, just raw, pure muscle and audacity. Izuku Midoriya crosses the finish line in record time without even breaking a sweat. Izuku stood at the end of the tunnel, the wind ruffling his green hair. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small cloth, and casually wiped a single speck of dust off his leather jacket. He didn't look tired, he didn't look pumped. He looked like he was waiting for a bus. 10 minutes later, the top 42 students were gathered on the field. Midnight stood on the podium, her eyes lingering on Izuku with a look that was half impressed and half terrified. The first event is over, she announced, her whip cracking through the air. But don't get comfortable. The next game is the cavalry battle. You'll form teams of 2 to 4 people. The points are based on your rank in the race, which means our first place winner is worth... She paused for dramatic effect, but Izuku already had a smirk on his face. 10 million points. The atmosphere shifted instantly. It was like 41 predators had just spotted a single golden elk. Bakugo's eyes were practically glowing red with malice, and Todoroki's left side was freezing across the floor. 10 million, Izuku chuckled loud enough for those around him to hear. Still feels like a discount, but I'll take it. And after that, everyone was avoiding Izuku like the plague, afraid that joining him would make them the biggest target in history, except for a few. Izuku-kun, Ochaka ran up, her face determined.
I know everyone is going to target you, but I want to help. You saved me during the entrance exam, and I'm not letting you do this alone. Sorry, Ochaka, but I won't team up with anyone because, well, it would also put a target on you as well. So for now, team up with someone else. Izuku said with a half smile, and Ochaka nodded in understanding and left to form her own team as Izuku stayed quiet until midnight gave to go and every team rushed towards Izuku, and Izuku smirked. As the crowd held its breath as the buzzer blared, a sound that usually signaled a frantic scramble, but as every single team, nearly 40 students, charged towards a single point in the center of the field, it looked less like a competition and more like a riot. Izuku didn't move. He didn't even drop into a defensive stance. He just stood there, his hands tucked into the pockets of his leather jacket, watching the wave of students closing in from all sides. He's standing his ground, Present Mike roared over the speakers. Midoriya is facing the entire field alone. Is this bravery or just pure arrogance? It's a funeral, Bakugo snarled, propelled by massive explosions as he led the charge from the front. Die, you shitty Deku! And after that, the first wave, led by Tetsu and a few students from Class B, reached him first. They lunged for the headband, dozens of hands reaching out at once. Izuku's eyes sharpened. In a move so fast it created a literal vacuum of air. He didn't run, he just shifted. With a single step to the left, he moved with such explosive velocity that he left an afterimage behind. The students collided with each other, grasping for thin air, while Izuku was suddenly standing 3 feet behind them, still with his hands in his pockets. Too slow. Todoroki didn't waste time. Hatsumi, now, he commanded his team. He slammed his foot down and a massive glacier of ice erupted from the ground, curved like a cage to trap Izuku. Izuku didn't even look at the ice. As the frozen wall rose to entomb him, he simply raised his right leg and brought it down in a casual axe kick. He didn't use a drop of his dragon quirk, but the sheer pressure from his heel hitting the ice sent a shockwave through the entire stadium. The massive glacier didn't just crack, it shattered into fine powder, the wind pressure blowing the remnants back and stalling every team in the vicinity. What the? That was just a kick? Idada gasped, his engine stalling. Bakugo came screaming in from above, his palms glowing even brighter. Don't ignore me! He let off a massive stun grenade to blind Izuku. As through the flash and smoke, Izuku's hand finally left his pocket. He didn't punch, he didn't grab, he reached up and caught Bakugo's face mid-flight with a single hand, stopping the explosive blonde's momentum instantly. The sheer force of the stop nearly sent Bakugo's feet over his head. You're getting loud, Katsuki, Izuku said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. He, with a flick of his wrist, tossed Bakugo towards Todoroki's team like a rag doll. As Todoroki had to use a giant ice wall just to cushion Bakugo's impact, and even then, the wall shattered on contact. And for the rest of the match, it wasn't a fight, it was a performance. Izuku moved through the field like a ghost. Whenever a team tried to corner him, he would simply leap 50 feet into the air or use a flick of his fingers to create a gust of wind that sent them stumbling. He didn't take anyone else's headbands.
The stadium gasped. Shinso smirked. Then you know you just lost. Now, walk out of the ring. Your quirk has no effect on me, and I don't even know why, but it's good. But really, I have to say it, if you used your quirk correctly and smartly, then you could be a pretty strong hero. Izuku said as got behind Shinso in 1 second as Shinso froze, his heart hammering against his ribs as he felt the cold draft of air behind him. He didn't even see Izuku move. It was like the green-haired boy had simply deleted the distance between them. Why didn't the brainwashing work? Shinso stammered, his voice trembling. He had landed a direct hit, a verbal response, yet Izuku was standing there, completely conscious and smirking like he was just taking a stroll in the park. Maybe your voice just isn't loud enough to wake the dragon, Izuku whispered, his voice vibrating with a depth that made the very air around them feel heavy. He didn't use a punch, he didn't use a kick, he simply placed a single hand on Shinso's shoulder. With the slightest nudge, no more than a casual push, a wave of pure kinetic force rippled through Shinso's body. Shinso didn't just stumble, he was launched. He skidded across the concrete like a stone skipping across water, unable to find his footing as he crossed the white boundary line and slammed into the outer wall with a muffled thud. Hitoshi, Shinso is out of bounds, Midnight's voice rang out, filled with a mix of awe and genuine confusion. The winner of the first match is Izuku Midoriya.
And after Midnight said that, the stadium went from dead silence to an absolute riot. People were standing on their seats screaming Izuku's name. Present Mike was practically vibrating in the commentary booth. "Did you see that?" Mike roared. 1 second. 1 second is all it took. No quirk, no dragon, just pure, unadulterated speed. Is this even the same species as us? Izuku didn't celebrate. He didn't even wave to the crowd. He just tucked his hands back into the pockets of his leather jacket and walked toward the tunnel. As he passed the Class 1A section, his eyes caught Todoroki's. The masterpiece was gripped with a visible tension, his left side smoking slightly. Izuku just gave a small, mocking two-finger salute before disappearing into the darkness of the hallway. As the rest of the first-round matches went by in a blur, but nobody was really paying attention to them. Everyone was just waiting for the next time the Divine Dragon would take the stage. Todoroki absolutely encased Sero in a mountain of ice, winning his match in seconds, and Bakugo brutally dismantled Ochako, though she put up a hell of a fight that earned her a nod of respect from the crowd. But then came the second round. Izuku was up against Ibara Shiozaki from Class 1B. As Shiozaki stepped onto the field, she clasped her hands in prayer. "I do not wish to cause harm, but for the sake of—" "Save the prayers for later," Izuku interrupted, already standing in the center of the ring. "You're going to need them to explain how you lost so fast." The buzzer went off. Shiozaki immediately sent a forest of thorny vines surging toward Izuku, aiming to trap him. Izuku didn't dodge. He just stood there as the vines wrapped around his arms and torso, tightening with enough force to crush steel. "I have captured the dragon," Shiozaki cried out. "Captured?" Izuku chuckled. He took one step forward, just one. The sheer strength in his legs as he moved snapped the vines like they were made of dry straw. He didn't even use his hands. He just walked through the thorns, the sharp points snapping off against his skin without leaving a single scratch. He reached Shiozaki in 3 steps. He didn't strike her, he just breathed out a heavy sigh. The pressure of his breath alone blew her long hair back and made her stumble. Then he gently tapped her forehead with 2 fingers. Boom! The force of the tap sent a shockwave through the air, and Shiozaki was sent sliding out of the ring, her vines trailing behind her like discarded ribbon. Winner, Izuku Midoriya. And the final 4 brackets were Izuku Midoriya versus Katsuki Bakugo, and then Shoto Todoroki versus Tenya Ida, and this is where we now jump cut to the semi-finals, and the first battle is between the Scaleless Dragon, Izuku Midoriya, versus the Kind Explosion Murder, Katsuki Bakugo. Present Mike announced loudly as both of them got on the arena, and the crowd watched in anticipation as Midnight gave the go. And Bakugo didn't wait. He didn't even use a normal dash. He slammed his palms backward, a massive explosion propelling him forward like a human missile. "Die, you shitty Deku!" he screamed, his right hand glowing with the gathered heat of a massive blast. He wasn't aiming to push Izuku out, he was aiming to erase him from the map. Bakugo closed the distance in a fraction of a second, bringing his palm down and a point-blank stun grenade. The arena was engulfed in a blinding white flash and a roar that shook the stadium's foundation. The crowd shielded their eyes and the smoke billowed thick and black. "Did he get him?" Kirishima shouted from the stands, leaning over the railing. As the smoke cleared, the stadium fell into a haunting silence. Izuku hadn't moved an inch. He was standing in the exact same spot, the front of his leather jacket slightly singed, but his face was perfectly calm. His right hand was out of his pocket, but only because he was holding Bakugo's wrist. Bakugo's eyes were wide, his pupils trembling. He had unleashed a blast that could level a building, and Izuku had caught his arm mid-explosion. "Is that all you've got, Katsuki?" Izuku asked, his voice chillingly steady. "You've been screaming for 10 years about being the best. Is this what the best looks like?" "Shut up!" Bakugo roared, his left hand coming around for a point-blank blast to Izuku's face. Izuku didn't even flinch. He let go of the right wrist, and in a movement that was too fast for the human eye to track, he caught Bakugo's left hand as well. Now, Bakugo was held by both wrists, his explosions muffled against Izuku's palms. The heat was enough to melt steel, but Izuku didn't have a red mark on his skin. "You're a firecracker trying to fight a volcano," Izuku said. Bakugo kicked out, trying to blast himself away, but Izuku's grip was like iron. With a sudden shift in weight, he pulled Bakugo in close, their faces inches apart. The absolute aura radiating from Izuku was so heavy that the students in the front row felt like they couldn't breathe. "You're not in my league," Izuku whispered. Izuku didn't punch, he didn't kick, he simply placed a single hand on Bakugo's shoulder. With the slightest nudge, no more than a casual push, a wave of pure kinetic force rippled through Bakugo's body. Shinso didn't just stumble, he was launched. He skidded across the concrete like a stone skipping across water, unable to find his footing as he crossed the white boundary line and slammed into the outer wall with a muffled thud. "Hitoshi, Shinso is out of bounds," Midnight's voice rang out, filled with a mix of awe and genuine confusion. "The winner of the first match, Izuku Midoriya." And after Midnight said that, the stadium went from dead silence to an absolute riot. People were standing on their seats screaming Izuku's name. Present Mike was practically vibrating in the commentary booth. "Did you see that?" Mike roared. 1 second. 1 second is all it took. No quirk, no dragon, just pure, unadulterated speed. Is this even the same species as us? Izuku didn't celebrate. He didn't even wave to the crowd. He just tucked his hands back into the pockets of his leather jacket and walked toward the tunnel. As he passed the Class 1A section, his eyes caught Todoroki's. The masterpiece was gripped with a visible tension, his left side smoking slightly. Izuku just gave a small, mocking two-finger salute before disappearing into the darkness of the hallway. As the rest of the first-round matches went by in a blur, but nobody was really paying attention to them. Everyone was just waiting for the next time the Divine Dragon would take the stage. Todoroki absolutely encased Sero in a mountain of ice, winning his match in seconds, and Bakugo brutally dismantled Ochako, though she put up a hell of a fight that earned her a nod of respect from the crowd. But then came the second round. Izuku was up against Ibara Shiozaki from Class 1B. As Shiozaki stepped onto the field, she clasped her hands in prayer. "I do not wish to cause harm, but for the sake of—" "Save the prayers for later," Izuku interrupted, already standing in the center of the ring. "You're going to need them to explain how you lost so fast." The buzzer went off. Shiozaki immediately sent a forest of thorny vines surging toward Izuku, aiming to trap him. Izuku didn't dodge. He just stood there as the vines wrapped around his arms and torso, tightening with enough force to crush steel. "I have captured the dragon," Shiozaki cried out. "Captured?" Izuku chuckled. He took one step forward, just one. The sheer strength in his legs as he moved snapped the vines like they were made of dry straw. He didn't even use his hands. He just walked through the thorns, the sharp points snapping off against his skin without leaving a single scratch. He reached Shiozaki in 3 steps. He didn't strike her, he just breathed out a heavy sigh. The pressure of his breath alone blew her long hair back and made her stumble. Then he gently tapped her forehead with 2 fingers. Boom! The force of the tap sent a shockwave through the air, and Shiozaki was sent sliding out of the ring, her vines trailing behind her like discarded ribbon. Winner, Izuku Midoriya. And the final 4 brackets were Izuku Midoriya versus Katsuki Bakugo, and then Shoto Todoroki versus Tenya Ida. And this is where we now jump cut to the semi-finals. And the first battle is between the scaleless dragon Izuku Midoriya versus the kind explosion murder Katsuki Bakugo. Present Mike announced loudly as both of them got on the arena, and the crowd watched in anticipation as Midnight gave the go. And Bakugo didn't wait. He didn't even use a normal dash. He slammed his palms backward, a massive explosion propelling him forward like a human missile.
The footage was being broadcast live across Japan. In the UA dorms, the students watched in stunned silence. And this is where we now jump cut to 1 hour later. Izuku sat on a hospital bed with no bandages because he was healing himself as his stamina was at 30%. But it was fine because he was not feeling sleepy yet until the door creaked open. Ida walked in, his arm in a sling, followed by Shoto Todoroki, who had arrived after hearing the news. Ida stopped at the foot of the bed, his head bowed so low his glasses nearly fell off. "Midoriya," Ida's voice was a ragged whisper. I was selfish. I put everyone in danger for my own pride. I'm not fit to be a hero. Izuku didn't look up from his hands. You're right. You weren't a hero tonight, Tenya. You were a victim of your own hate. He finally looked up, his gaze piercing. But you're still alive. That means you have a choice. You can stay broken, or you can use that shame as fuel to become the hero Tensei wanted you to be. Decide now. Shoto stepped forward, his left side still faintly radiating heat. He's right, Ida. Tonight we all saw what a real hero looks like. We're miles behind him. Shoto turned to Izuku. I heard you used 30%, so then how strong are you at 100%, Izuku? Todoroki said. As Izuku chuckled, I was always at full power. It's just that the transformation is the cost, not how long I stay in the transformation. But the attacks, yeah, they do take stamina, but not that lot unless I go all out, which I can't because, well then Hosu City will be instead called just Hosu. Izuku as he chuckled and laid on the bed, as the room fell into a heavy, thoughtful silence after Izuku's comment. Shoto and Ida exchanged a look of pure realization. They were worried about his energy levels, but Izuku was worried about the literal structural integrity of the planet if he ever stopped holding back. As the door opened again, but it wasn't a nurse. Suragame, the chief of police, entered alongside All Might, who was in his deflated, skeletal form to avoid attention. The chief looked at the three students, his expression unreadable. I should arrest all three of you, woof, Suragame said, his voice stern. Unlicensed quirk usage, causing massive public damage and the death of several biological entities. Strictly speaking, you've broken enough laws to be expelled and jailed. Ida winced, but Izuku didn't even sit up. He just looked at the ceiling. If you arrest the person who saved the city from 8 monsters and a serial killer on live television, your department will be burned down by the public before sunrise. You aren't here to arrest me. You're here to ask for a favor. All Might let out a small, dry cough, half impressed and half terrified by Izuku's bluntness. He's right, Chief. We can't move against him. The public already calls him the Dragon of Hosu. The chief sighed, his shoulders sagging. Official records will state that Endeavor handled the Nomus, and the hero killer was found unconscious due to his injuries. Your names will be kept out of the police report to protect your licenses. But Midoriya, the Hero Commission is watching you now. Be careful. They don't like legends they can't control. Don't fuck with me right now. I saved an entire city, so if they at all try anything, something bad will happen. So tell them not to get on my shit, Izuku said in a slightly angry tone, as Ida, Todoroki, All Might, and the chief flinched, as after a bit more talking they left and Izuku was now alone as he rested. And while all of this was happening, All for One had invaded Tartarus alone, and for now only got Shigaraki and Kurogiri out of there because the rest can wait until let free, and so now Shigaraki, Kurogiri are free, while Stain was sent to Tartarus after Kurogiri and Shigaraki were freed. But now let's get back to Izuku, as the internship week ended and the atmosphere at UA had shifted entirely. When Izuku walked through the front gates, students from the general education and support courses didn't just look, they stepped aside, creating a wide path as if a monarch was passing. Inside Class 1A, the noise was deafening until Izuku pushed the door open. The room went silent instantly. Midoriya, Kirishima was the first to speak, his face a mix of awe and fear. Man, we saw the footage. You were like a force of nature. You took down that strong monster thing like it was a toy. I heard you fought the hero killer too, Suyu added, her finger on her chin. Is it true he just gave up when he saw you? That's a lie. I punched him through 4 buildings, Izuku said as he walked to his desk, glancing at Bakugo. Katsuki was sitting in his chair, his hands trembling slightly in his pockets. He hadn't said a word since the sports festival. The gap wasn't just wide anymore, it was the distance between the damn sun and Earth. I did what was necessary, Izuku said simply, sitting down. The monster, or as the heroes call them, Nomus, were strong, but I was stronger. And as Izuku said that, Aizawa entered the room, looking more tired than usual.
He stared at Izuku for a long time before speaking. Because of the events in Hosu, the school has decided to accelerate your combat training. We're moving straight to the practical exams. But for Izuku, we have a different arrangement. Aizawa clicked a remote, and the screen showed a map of the Unforeseen Simulation Junction, USJ. The Hero Commission and the school board have requested a performance review. You won't be fighting robots or teachers, Izuku. You've been assigned to a 1v all gauntlet. You'll defend a point against the rest of Class 1A simultaneously. The class gasped. All of us against just him? Uraraka asked, worried, while Izuku had an unimpressed expression. Did you forget what happened at the UA Sports Festival? I was able to block and dodge from every single one of the students here at UA High and from the other courses. And yeah, they got stronger after the internships were over, I hope so. But me versus my class is something. Teamwork makes the dream work, but are you really sure this will go right? Izuku said in a bored tone, as Aizawa leaned against the podium, his tired eyes narrowing. It's not just about winning or losing, Midoriya. The commission wants to see your restraint, your tactical decision-making, and how you handle a coordinated assault from peers who know your capabilities. And as for the class, he looked toward the rest of the students, his voice dropping an octave. This is your chance to see if a gap this large can be closed with numbers and strategy. Don't go into this expecting to lose, or you've already failed as heroes. And as Aizawa said that, we now get to the strategy, or in slang terms, the plan that Class 1A is cooking up to this overpowered this. As the tension in the Heights Alliance dorms was palpable, for the first time Bakugo and Todoroki were sitting at the same table, surrounded by the rest of 1A. No one was shouting. The footage from Hosu had humbled even the loudest voices. He doesn't use his quirk unless he's annoyed or serious, Bakugo growled, staring at a drawing of the USJ layout. If we rush him, he'll just use that palm strike to clear the zone. We need to keep him at a distance and drain that stamina he talks about. His healing is the problem, Todoroki said, tapping his left side. If we manage to land a hit, he just regenerates. We have to hit him with everything at once, a simultaneous multi-directional strike that overwhelms his reaction time. Momo Yaoyoroziru began sketching out a series of high-tension capture nets and flash grenades. I can provide the equipment, but someone has to get close enough to distract him, and that person might not walk away uninjured. And as they made their plan, we now jump cut to the next morning as the class stood at the entrance of the USJ. In the center of the central plaza, standing on a small raised circular platform, was Izuku. He was wearing his reinforced black cargo pants and a simple compression shirt that showed every cord of muscle in his frame. He wasn't even in a fighting stance. He was just standing there with his eyes closed. The rules are simple, Aizawa's voice boomed over the intercom. Izuku must stay within 10 meters of that platform. If any of you land a solid blow or force him off the platform, the class wins. If he incapacitates all of you or holds the point for 30 minutes, he wins. Go. Now! Ida screamed, his engines roaring at maximum output as he led the charge. And instantly the air was filled with attacks. Kaminari unleashed a 1.3 million volt discharge to create a barrier of electricity, while Uraraka and Sero sent a barrage of weighted debris and tape from above. Dark Shadow surged forward like a black tidal wave, and Bakugo launched himself into the air, preparing a massive howitzer impact. Izuku didn't open his eyes until the attacks were inches from his face. Slow, Izuku muttered. As he didn't move from his spot, he simply exhaled, and the sheer force of his breath created a localized wind pressure that dissipated Kaminari's lightning and blew back the falling debris. In a movement that looked like a blur, he caught Ida's leg mid-kick and redirected the momentum, sending the speedster spinning toward the approaching Dark Shadow. As Bakugo came screaming down from above, palms glowing, "Don't look down on us, Deku!" Todoroki slammed his foot down, creating a massive glacier that funneled toward Izuku's feet to trap him. At the same time, Shoji and Sato rushed in from the flanks for a physical pincer maneuver. As Izuku finally took his hands out of his pockets, he didn't transform, he didn't use blue fire, he simply used base physicality.
As Izuku punched the ground, the shock wave didn't just shatter Todoroki's ice, it sent a ripple through the concrete that threw everyone off balance. As Bakugo neared, he reached up, grabbed the explosive boy's collar, and slammed him into the ground with enough force to crater the floor, though he pulled the punch.
They scrambled out of the apartment, the door clicking shut with a finality that left the room in a ringing silence. Izuku's aura vanished instantly as he turned to his mother. The terrifying dragon of Hosu was gone, replaced by a son who gently took the teapot from her shaking hands. "I'm sorry they scared you, Mom," Izuku said, his voice returning to its soft, natural tone. "But I need you to pack a bag. Just the essentials. We aren't staying here." "Izuku, what's happening? Who were those people?" Inko asked, tears brimming in her eyes. She had seen her son grow into something magnificent, but now she was seeing the cost of that glory. "The world is changing, Mom, and the people in charge are afraid of anyone they can't put a leash on," Izuku explained, guiding her toward her bedroom. "I'm taking you to someone I trust, somewhere no agent or villain can find you." Under the cover of night, Izuku didn't use a plane. He transformed into his half-dragon form, his massive blue-scaled wings spanning the width of the street. He carried Inko in a specialized pressurized capsule he had borrowed from the UA support labs, flying at altitudes that bypassed civilian radar. He landed on a private, decommissioned research rig owned by David Shield, an old friend of All Might, and Izuku pulled some strings, plus David being interested in him made it easier to convince David to do this. "She stays here," Izuku told the security droids. "If anyone approaches without my biometric signature, vaporize the bridge." And this is where we now jump cut to the next morning. UA High was surrounded. Not by villains, but by the military police and HPSC tactical units. They had a warrant for Izuku Midoriya's arrest, citing terrorist threats against government officials and illegal possession of Class S biological assets. Aizawa and All Might stood at the front gates, refusing to move. "He's a student under our protection," All Might roared, though his cough betrayed his weakness. "He's a threat to national security," the HPSC director shouted through a megaphone. "Midoriya, come out now or we will authorize lethal force against this facility." And after that, Izuku was shown as he flew down and detransformed back into his base, and in a blink of an eye got in front of the lead person of this shitty operation. "Who is going to stop me from killing you right here and now? No one. Absolutely no one here can stop me," Izuku said in a calm voice, as the 50 or so tactical officers leveled high-output sonic cannons and Quirk suppressant rifles instantly got hit with lightning from the earth as the 50 officers collapsed in unison, their high-tech armor seizing up as the electric shock bypassed their defenses. They weren't dead. Izuku was too precise for that, but they were completely paralyzed, twitching as the blue sparks danced over their visors as Izuku didn't even have his hands up. He was simply standing there, the concrete beneath his feet glowing a faint molten orange from the sheer heat his body was radiating. He looked at the lead HPSC director, a man named Karasuma, whose face had gone the color of ash. "Your toys are broken," Izuku said, his voice a low, terrifying hum that seemed to vibrate in Karasuma's teeth. "And the earth itself is tired of you standing on it." You're attacking government officials," Karasuma stammered, stumbling backward until he hit the side of an armored transport. "This is a declaration of war, Midoriya. You'll be hunted by every hero in the world." "Heroes?" Izuku tilted his head, a genuine, cold smirk touching his lips. He glanced back at the UA gates where Aizawa and All Might stood. Behind them, the windows of the dorms were filled with the faces of Class 1A, not watching in fear, but in a silent, unified defiance. "Look around you, Karasuma. The heroes are behind me. The only thing in front of me is a group of bureaucrats who think they can own a force of nature." Izuku took a single step forward, and the armored transport Karasuma was leaning against suddenly buckled, the metal groaning as if an invisible giant had stepped on it. "I've spent the last hour reflecting," Izuku continued, his emerald eyes bleeding into a reptilian gold. "You tried to use my mother as a pawn. You tried to arrest me for saving a city. You've proven that the law is just a weapon you use to kill anyone you can't control." Izuku reached out and grabbed the barrel of a fallen Quirk suppressant rifle. With a slight flex of his fingers, the reinforced steel turned into dust, fluttering away in the wind. Here is the new law, Izuku stated, his voice now booming through the entire district, amplified by the sheer pressure of his aura. The HPSC is disbanded as of this moment. I am revoking your authority over UA High. And for now, UA High will be the main place controlling the Hero Commission, Izuku said as he looked at Nezu, whose expression was calm. As Nezu stepped forward, the principal of UA High hadn't just been a passive observer, he'd been calculating the probability of this exact moment since the sports festival. While the HPSC had been busy trying to control Izuku, Nezu had been quietly detaching UA's servers from government oversight and rerouting the school's funding through private offshore accounts. It seems the board of directors has undergone a rather sudden restructuring, Nezu said, his voice cheerful yet sharp enough to cut glass. He looked up at Karasuma, who was still trembling on the cracked pavement. Director, your presence is no longer required. In fact, your entire department has just been served with a comprehensive audit conducted by me. The power shift, UA Sovereign Zone. As Karasuma and the paralyzed units retreated, Izuku turned to Nezu. The boy's draconic heat was cooling, but the air still shimmered around him. You were ready for this, Izuku noted. I have always found the Commission's methods to be inefficient, Nezu replied, his eyes gleaming with a manic intelligence. With you as the deterrent and my intellect managing the logistics, we can finally turn this school into what it was meant to be, a fortress for the future. We are no longer a school under the jurisdiction of Japan. As of 10 minutes ago, I have filed the paperwork to declare UA High a sovereign independent zone. The students of Class 1A who had gathered at the gate were silent. They weren't just students anymore. They were the first citizens of a new nation. The global domino effect. The news of UA's secession and the destruction of the HPSC tactical units hit the global stage like a nuclear blast. In the United States, Star and Stripe watched the satellite footage of Izuku crushing the rifle into dust. Is that a kid or a god? Her commander asked. Doesn't matter, Kathleen Bate replied, narrowing her eyes. If he's the real deal, the world's power balance just shifted from Washington and Japan to a high school campus. All for One's final gamble. Deep in the shadows of a hidden lab, All for One watched the broadcast through a wall of monitors. His scarred face, devoid of eyes, seemed to twist into a grin. The boy is doing my work for me, he whispered to Shigaraki and Kurogiri. He has dismantled the government. He has alienated the heroes. He is alone on a throne he doesn't realize is a target. So we kill him now? Shigaraki asked, his fingers itching to decay the screen. No, Tamara, we don't kill a dragon with a sword. We kill it by starving it. If UA is a sovereign zone, they have no supply lines, no food, no electricity, no public support. We let the world turn against them. We let the fear of his power do the rotting for us. The night of the new era. Back at UA, the dorms were quiet. Izuku sat on the roof of the main building, staring out at the city lights of Mustafa. He could hear the faint sound of sirens in the distance, the chaos of a country that no longer knew who was in charge. A soft thud sounded behind him. Bakugo sat down, looking at his hands, which were no longer shaking. You really did it, Deku, Bakugo said, his voice surprisingly calm. You broke the world. I didn't break it, Kasuki. I just stopped pretending it was fixed, Izuku replied. He looked at his own palms, where the faint blue glow of his aura still flickered. The Commission will try to hire assassins. All for One will try to use the chaos. Are you ready for what comes next? Bakugo let out a sharp, jagged bark of a laugh. I spent my whole life wanting to be number one. I guess I'll just have to settle for being the right hand of the strongest monster in history. Nice joke, Izuku said, as 1 hour after Izuku's ultimatum, the old guard of heroes met in a secret emergency bunker. Best Jeanist, Ryuku, Edgeshot, and Mount Lady stood around a circular table. The air was thick with tension. We can't just let a teenager dictate national policy, Best Jeanist said, adjusting his collar. Even if he is as powerful as the footage suggests, a society without a central government is just a playground for villains. And what do you suggest, Jeanist? Ryuku asked, her arms crossed. You saw what he did to the HPSC tactical team. You saw him erase the Nomus. If we march on UA, we're not just restoring order, we're committing suicide.
He saved my life in Hosu, Native said, still bandaged. The commission was ready to let the city burn just to test him. Midoriya isn't the problem. The people who were in charge are. Izuku stood in Neizu's office. The principal was typing at a speed that shouldn't be possible for a rodent, his eyes reflecting lines of code. The HPSC has officially gone dark, Neizu reported, but they've left a vacuum. The police don't know who to take orders from, and the public is divided. Half of them think you're a savior, the other half are terrified you're the next All for One. Izuku looked out the window. I don't care what they think. I care about the fact that All for One is out there and he's the only one who can actually benefit from this chaos. Then we must act first, Neizu said, spinning his chair around. We need to show the world that UA isn't a threat, it's the new standard. We shouldn't wait for the final exams. We should hold a global press conference. Invite the top heroes. Invite the world. Show them the dragon is here to lead, not to rule. I'm a liar, it's just that. Those were all empty threats which everyone believed because I had the power, Izuku said, sighing for a second. Neizu stopped typing, the clicking of the keys replaced by a profound silence. He turned his chair slowly,